Hello. Welcome to this much needed episode, recording in the time that we don't usually record. Um, yeah, so Trump won. Trump is going to be our next president. And I thought we should come in here because there's a lot of despair, a lot of pain, a lot of fear with that conclusion of the elections, I guess you can say.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, at first, I was going to sleep yesterday and I couldn't, and I waited a little bit more. And then I saw somebody that knows what they're talking about that it was a wrap, that Trump was going to win, losing the Senate, losing the House, and all that shit. So then I was like, okay, it's done. I fell asleep. I told Celia, my wife, and she's like, fuck, I was trying to avoid it so I can go to sleep. And now you said it, and now I'm not going to sleep. So, surely enough, I woke up at 6. She was already all dressed for work. She doesn't have to leave till 7. So, for sure, she didn't get any sleep on it. Um, and my first feeling was fear, right?
Mhm.
Because I'm undocumented and I'm about to get or close to getting my stuff,
Mhm.
and what's gonna happen with that, right? So then I have to start dealing with the possibility of when I go, um, if it happens next year, which is every day that I don't get my appointment, it looks like it's gonna be next year. Then it could not be announced or anything, and I could just go there, and they're like, nope, sorry. And I have to start getting used to the idea of that being a possibility, right? Of actually moving over there. And it was fearful, scareful. I think about the girls and the change for them, how it will be and shit like that. And that was my first reaction. It's just like sadness and fear, you know. How'd it go for you?
A little bit of the same. Like I told myself that I was gonna come home from work, um, and I was just going to have dinner and then go to bed. Um, but I couldn't. Um, I kept checking. Like I would go to Google. You know how they have like the live thing,
Mm,
and I kept refreshing it and refreshing it, and where it said like, okay, this race hasn't been called, but seeing like where it was leaning towards, I was like, I know I'm gonna wake up to the confirmation, not
yeah.
like if it's gonna happen, more of the confirmation.
Yeah.
So then I woke up, and yeah, it was a um the first thing that, well, not the first thing I did sunbathe for a little bit because I'm like, I need this. But then that was like the first thing I did after, like as soon as I grabbed my phone, and then I saw that it was confirmed, and I was like, okay, not surprised, not surprised at all. Um, Going on there and seeing like who the biggest supporters are, which is white men and white Latinos, really hurts. Really, really hurts because like it is like our own people that are like, how do you support somebody that doesn't even want your family here? You know what I mean? And um like I am very privileged to be a US citizen now, but that doesn't even matter because he's also wanting to de-document people that have been naturalized, which is me. But I also have a little sister right now who has been going through the immigration process for 8 years now. So then thinking of like, what does this mean for her? What does this mean for my family? Is really, it's really hard to even fathom the possibility of my sister not getting her documentation to be able to come back. Like it's very personal. Um, and not just with that, right? But just like being a person that has a uterus and like what it means, me being a single person, and if I date and I get pregnant by somebody that I don't want, like, even though I'm pro-choice, I always say, like, I don't think I would have an abortion, uh,
Mhm.
but all of those things go through your head, like, "Holy shit," like, this is a high possibility that I'm gonna have to be dealing with. So, like, the first thing, when my little brother yesterday on our family chat, he said, like, "We're gonna wake up to Trump winning." And my response to that was like, "Vámonos a Mexico." Uh, I mean, I know that if I really wanted to, that is a possibility that I could, but, like, what about everybody else that can't? Because even that, right, like, being able to say, like, "Yeah, if I want to, I can go back to my home country." Not everybody has that possibility. So, I don't know. I I think I am angry of how even if we are in a time when we are more aware or awake or whatever the fuck you wanna call it, like, this sense of, like, defeat almost, like, it's not enough. Like, estás viendo y no ves, you know? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that's it's a sign of how much further we still have to go. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
uh, the thing about us getting deported and kicking everybody that's undocumented out doesn't make any sense because it doesn't help them financially. The people that know finances know how much they make off of us and the taxes that we pay and how we don't get shit in return.
Yeah.
So we're here to make the money, and they won't be mass deportations because the economy will suffer greatly from those things. So that
And you
is
know what? Like,
the people that know doesn't even make any sense to do that. And remember, it's sadly is still money over everything. Like,
yes. Yeah, I agree with you in that sense because, like, yeah, like, this they have literally used us as, like, pawns every fucking election, right? Like, with their immigration reform, with mass deportations, like, since I've been here in this country,
yeah,
that has been a fucking topic. Every fucking 4 years, they use us that way. And yeah, you're right, like, nothing really happens where, um, like, things don't get better, things don't get worse, um and still, like, the rhetoric that's used against us, like, it affects us, it
yeah,
constantly affects us because then now, like, laws that are going into effect, right, like, on the ballot in Arizona was like, okay, if you look brown, if you like that part of, like, racial profiling, like, they're gonna ask you for papers, like, just I'm thinking of the aggressions that are going to happen, not in the macro level, but at the local level, right? Of, like, if you see somebody that's brown and the violence that we're going to be exposed to, um, because now the it's almost like because you have this leader that's transphobic, homophobic, ableist, like, racist, everybody that follows him then has a reason to be that, right? And part of that is Latino men, because the homophobia, the transphobia, like, the sexism within our community is huge. So then that gives them a reason to like, okay, this is okay for me to do, to, like, flaunt it. And that's scary. That's very scary.
yeah, yeah. I had two those. I agree with that, but you know what's weird? I feel safer that he won. I feel like I would have been more in danger if he would have lost. I feel
Tell me
like
more.
my people, my family, the ones that look like you more than me because I look white. They would have suffered more if he would have lost. Because we take the pain by having these conversations, by being sad, by being whatever. We don't. I feel like we don't have that craziness of the anger and the war and the fighting. And I believe the other side does. I already was already preparing and thinking, well, if Kamala wins, I'm gonna tell my dad to not sell carnitas on the weekend. I'm not gonna take my girls to school for like a week or two or something until this shit goes off because I know those motherfuckers will do something crazy like that. Being that, so in a way, I told Sally this morning, like the way it gives me, it makes me more a little bit more. I feel more at peace that I don't have to deal with the violence that is gonna happen in the violence that you're talking about. I guess it's just gonna go up and maintain steadily. But I was like, as I'm thinking about it now, I was like, at least I'm not getting that violence that is a big spike that I expect happening from him losing and shit like that, you know. But not that either of them are good or whatever. So yeah, that's how I felt for a while. I cried a little bit of the shit. Um and then I told him, and then the thought just came up again, right? Of like acceptance. This is where you're at. This is where it's at. This is where we're at as a country. This is where you're at in your situation, and what can you do from that thing going forward? You know.
Yeah.
I mean, before I even move on, the thing that never even crossed my mind, but you mentioned it now when I saw some things before we started recording. It's like almost an apology to you, to my wife, to my daughters, and it's like sad that we still that that you're still second, what do you call it, second
Second
tier
class citizen.
citizens or second class citizens in that fucking way. That is unbelievable to me to have to see that again. That that we're still so broken, right? Like even and the most painful part is like that you put your machismo, as for the Latino male that voted for him, you put your machismo above like your own well-being. That's fucking crazy, right?
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy that you still have those ideas and you're willing to put that above everything else, above your own safety, about your own family safety or whatever it might be. You're willing to say those things, you know, because that rhetoric was definitely out there that like, oh, women are not meant to lead and shit like that. A woman is not meant to lead and all that played, you know. Um,
Because we're too emotional.
yeah, yeah, right. And I'm just like, what the fuck, man? Like, what is that? But now that I made peace and understand all that shit, I guess then my thing goes to the same shit that we're preaching, right? Somebody asked me, how do you, what can we do about war? Someone asked me like a month or so ago. And I said, heal yourself. Heal yourself. That's the only thing you can do is heal yourself. Because the here comes the hard part. The people in the other side, and not that me and you, like I said, we already explained it. We're in neither side. Um, but the more right wing people and all that stuff, we have to remember they're just like us. They want the best for their families, they want the best for their kids, they want to have peace, they want to have that stuff. But somehow we they have, and we even, everybody at the end of the day, most people, we have been brainwashed and we have been misled
Mhm.
and haven't done that part of that we've been doing in this podcast for the last fucking months that we've been doing, of looking at within yourself and what part it is yourself. We don't have the critical thinking, we don't have all that stuff. And unfortunately that thing that even I felt to when I was in confronted by a Trump supporter, I just reacted with anger and violence and frustration, and I shouldn't have, right? I should have been with more understanding, more peace, more the shit. This is the part that's hard to do, but they're just like me and you. They're just like me and you. They're just broken humans that want more for themselves, for their lives, for their family, for their kids, for their grandkids. And you just put in that whole thing, and you're easily manipulated by blaming other people instead of looking at what the fuck is going on. What is the actual reality of it? Because sadly, we just go for the simple thing, right? Like our body and our mind doesn't want to struggle, so we just go to the simplicity of shit. We just be like, oh yeah, sure, it's the Mexicans, it's the blacks, it's the Muslims, it's the shit. Because we don't want to look, because it's painful to look at what is actually happening in the whole system overall. Because we're just easily manipulated. We've been manipulated since birth. Um, it goes together, right, with the same shit, with the
With
four
the
agreements.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's the same thing. Like we've been manipulated, we've been domesticated since birth to
Domesticated.
believe this certain thing. And it's just crazy how that, and a lot of the shit that I always saw, at least from the Latinos for Trump thing, was like, oh, but it's taking care of the economy and is keeping more money in my pocket and shit like that. And how
That's literally
crazy.
what somebody else said to
Yeah,
me the other day.
yeah,
Was like, I hope Trump wins. And I was like, you
yeah.
think that? Like, I didn't think that that person would think that. Um, and I'm like, what's your reasoning behind it? And he was like, the economy. And I'm like, what do you mean the economy? And and he was like, well, the economy with Biden right now is like really bad. And I'm like, do you know whose like economy plan we're like under right now? We are under Trump's economy plan from 2017 that doesn't expire into 2025. Like, this is not Biden's doing. This is Trump's
Yeah.
doing from back when back then. So um
It's just crazy how they just repeat. You just repeat what you've been told. Well, it's the same shit. Look at it. You just
yeah,
repeat what you've
and
been
that's
told.
and that's the thing, right? Like the fact checking, the like how and that is um that's exactly what the manipulation, that's how manipulation works, right? Like,
Hmm.
you use people's pain, weaknesses, if you will, um against them, right? So then for men, it is all of the transphobia, the homophobia, the sexism, because that is where we hurt.
Hmm.
That is how our community has thrived, um, from that machista perspective. um, and everybody else, right? That, but it's information that maybe because I was looking at I don't know if you saw like the breakdowns of like age groups, college degrees, eh, ethnicities, all of that, like who voted for who. And again, most of that comes from um white men that don't even have a higher education. So it is, they're struggling as white people. But then Trump comes in, somebody that quote unquote looks like them, um, and tells them, "Oh, it's the brown people, it's the black people that are doing this." When in reality, it's literally Trump doing that to them, but they don't know that because they're not taking the time to like read and educate themselves as to why things are happening, right? Like if we like this person that told me like, "Oh, I hope Trump wins because of the economy," doesn't even live here in the country. He lives in Mexico. So it's like, why do you, and I understand that like overall whatever the US does affects like everybody.
Hmm.
Um but still is like you're not firsthand, you're not necessarily experiencing this part of the good or bad economy. So like, where are you getting
Yeah.
that information even from?
Doesn't make any sense. It's like
Um,
when I was thinking about that, I was like, oh, it's like asking somebody, okay, do you know what a sandwich is? Okay, make a sandwich. And then They make the sandwich and be like, okay, do you see how you're able to make it, or explain to me how you make a sandwich? Explain to me the economy and how that works and what he's done for this shit. And then it ends right there. There's nothing to say. It's just there. It's just literally passing the information of what you heard and shit like that. A big shit that I want to make a fucking statement here is that individualism doesn't fucking exist and it doesn't fucking work. It does not
Does
work.
not.
You literally would have died without your fucking mom feeding you. You would have died without your dad giving you a fucking place for you to live. Your stupid ass wouldn't have survived without the friends that you developed in kindergarten and middle school and your teacher. You wouldn't have survived with the fucking cop that came to save your life for whatever reason, without the firefighter that did the thing, without the nurse that fucking helped you when you were sick, without the friends and the people that you met along your life that taught you this, without the information you fucking read that somebody took their time to write for your stupid ass to be able to look at and read. There is no self such thing as self-made, and your people with this kind of mentality believe that shit and pursue that shit that is all about them and it's also made, and that is not fucking real. It is impossible. You would have fucking died after birth. A motherfucker, you wouldn't have been born if two people didn't fucking do the thing.
Mhm.
So where do we get this fucking idea about like this whole thing about we care about ourselves? Because that's the big issue, right? We care about ourselves. Oh, he's protecting me. He's doing shit for me and all this shit in me. And that's the fucking big problem in this country is that we're only out to look out for ourselves. When in reality, our community impacts everything about us.
Mhm.
A community responsible for that shit. So it doesn't make any sense. No one is self-made. No one did it by themselves. No one.
Nobody.
You're just, if you think you did it by yourself, you're just like in denial and in so much pain that you can even look at and be able to look at the people that helped you along the way and how your environment helped you. Because at the end of the day, that's the main issue. Everybody just in this fucking country, everybody looks out for themselves and wants to do the best for themselves. I don't care about nothing else as long as I'm okay. And they pursue that shit and end up hurting themselves. That just doesn't make any sense. But
Yeah.
we have to continue to do. There's no more time more important than continue to spread and continue to do what we're doing, right? Because
Yeah.
it's that shit, that not understanding how broken we are and how we keep blaming other people, um, and how distracted we are and how manipulated we are by the media and by everything. And then it goes back again to the same motherfucking thing about identity. The more you push your identity and what you believe for, the more the other people defend it. So we also have to be smart as a society of people that are more conscious to have that understanding and not just jump into that shit. You have to be more mindful, more careful to approach it in a way that you don't question there. You have to be like the same thing, right? The same thing as therapy or coaching or whatever the fuck. Meet them where they're at and make them slowly question and think a little bit differently about shit and all that. Because it's hard that we just get countered, and when we get countered, we just defend like a motherfucker. We put a higher guard and we defend ourselves.
Yeah. For for the people that might be listening, and if you are a person that supports Trump, I really do invite you to sit with what it is about him, his ideology that resonates with you, and invite you to challenge that. Like, where does that come from? Right? Like him being transphobic, homophobic. I invite you to stop and think, how does a person's existence in any way, shape, or form affects you directly? Because you're saying he's going to take care of me. How is it that a trans person interferes with your day to day life? How is it that a woman choosing, or a person with a uterus choosing to or not to have a child interferes with you? Like, really sit down and think about these things, because a lot of it comes from the fear. It comes from that, the agreements, the domesticated agreements that we come with, but we really need to sit down and challenge them. If a person out there chooses to show up in a way that they want to, like, how does me as a person from the queer community, right, like how does me having short hair affect any of you? How does me wearing this necklace affect any of you? All we're asking is to just let us live. Let me exist. That's it.
Yeah.
I promise you, our existence does not in any way, shape, or form. We're not trying to make the world trans. We're not trying to make the world gay. We're not trying to make everybody hate men. Like, that's not, like, what we're fighting for is just for us to coexist with each other so that you can do whatever the fuck you want to do. That's all. That is all we're asking for. So please really sit down and think about where your beliefs come from. Who taught you those things? And how do those things like actually affect you? Because chances are it's probably coming from a place of hurt. And those very things, those very beliefs, whether you want to or not, have probably also hurt you in some way, shape, or form. So pay attention to that.
Yeah. I I also saw that afterwards as like a thing. Okay, we gotta get to work. Like I was telling you, there's more work to be done. There's more shit to do. We asking for that. And you know what? The other thing that just came to my mind that I remembered, um, like I shared in my social media. It's a good thing because we can stop pretending, right? It's a good thing because we can stop lying to ourselves. Like this is what it is, and this is who we are, and this is how we think, and this is where we're at. But also now, I think I agree with voting for neither of them because now here are the consequences. The small percentage of people that said, "Nah, I don't fuck with either of you. I'm voting third party. I'm not picking any of you." You made a difference. Let them now. You let them know, together with all the other stuff, that we're not taking this shit anymore, and we're not doing that, and willing to live with the consequences of whatever the worst of the evils is, of the two evils, right? So that's a good thing. At the same time, um, but we have to continue to work. I mean, just like every advice that we've ever given and everything that we study and that we preach, feel the pain. Give yourself the time to feel that pain. Feel it is that whatever you're feeling, right? And then from then you're gonna be able to make a more rational thing. Like I was telling my wife, it feels terrible, and it feels like if he does everything he says he's gonna do, then we should all be scared. But at the end of the day, that's knitting that sweater, right? We're still getting ahead of ourselves. It felt like this in 2016, and in actuality, yes, they fucked up the economy, but that's all that happened,
And
right? So we have to wait and see what happens and then react accordingly, because it also does us no service to be stressed out 100% of the time waiting to see what's going to happen. And it just continues to fuck us up. So feel it, but also don't get ahead of yourself. Don't don't start coming up with solutions to things that I'm not even there, that are not even there. Like for example, it's just, yeah, it's in the back of my mind. If I go to my appointment in Mexico and I get denied, then like, okay, I have to start getting to the idea that that's a possibility. Then I'm like, okay, I have to be like water, right? I strive to be like water. Whatever life throws at me, whatever situation happens, I'm gonna make the best of it, and that's what was gonna happen. So this is where I'm at. This is accept that and work through that stuff, and live like that.
yeah, one of the things that the book, The Four Agreements, said was that like how people react is has to do with like them, and it comes from their reality, and this part of it has like really been sitting in my mind, like even if somebody like shoots you, it has nothing to do with you. And I'm like, how do you come to terms with that? Like that is so hard to make peace with, right? Because then now, as a brown person, as a person who is mostly female presenting, who has a uterus, who's from the queer community, who is an immigrant, all of those parts of my identity are being threatened right now as we speak. So like there is like a bigger chance that I will experience some type of like violence.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile that's like, oh yeah, if somebody does something to me, to be like, I accept it because this has nothing to do with me. Like that shit is hard.
Yeah.
Right now I'm like, that doesn't math in my brain.
Yeah. But that's the challenge, right? That's the challenge. It will forever be challenged to that shit, and that's what will make the difference going forward. Right? That's what stops the cycle of fucking violence. For you to be so hurt and so acted out against and so punished and so criticized and all that shit, and for you to not turn around, for your anger not to take over you, and for you to then turn it around and say some hurtful shit, do some hurtful shit to anybody, and be like, no, and I understand why you're like this, and it has nothing to do with me. So like, I forgive you, and it's okay, and I'm not gonna act, and I'm not gonna say anything. Like that's the ultimate fucking challenge of it. That's the ultimate fucking goal, and that's how you stop it. Because otherwise, we just continue in this fucking cycle, right? Because what do we get? What do we get out of fighting back? How they're fighting us? What do we
Yeah,
get out of it? What comes out of it? Are we just creating pain on them that then creates pain on us in future generations? Shout out
yeah,
Naruto, right?
yeah.
We
I
just continue to
experienced
do that.
I experienced a little bit of that yesterday. Um, I went to the DMV, and like I saw um this brown guy,
Mhm.
and like I overheard the lady who was white, and like what caught my attention was like her rude tone. So then I like turned around, and then I saw him looking at her kind of like puzzled. Um and she asked something like, you don't speak English, like very rudely, very visibly upset that he
Mhm.
didn't speak English. So I'm like looking at this interaction, and he's like looking at his phone, kind of like, what do I do? Like, how do I make this interaction happen? Right. So then I was like, okay, I have two choices right now. Cause how she was acting towards him, it was just really triggering for me. Um, and then I was like, all right now I have two choices. I can just sit here and be mad and not do anything, or I can go over there and I can try to help as much as I can. Because at some point, I was that person that I didn't speak English. So then I went over there and I asked him, like, ¿hablas español? And he's like, uh-huh. I'm like, do you need help? ¿Necesitas ayuda? And he's like, sí, por favor, right? So then the lady looks at me like really upset, and she's kind of like, what are you doing here, right? My assumption, because I don't know if that's actually what she thought. Um, but I was like, okay, what are you here to do? Like, oh, I need to do the written test. So I was like, okay, he's here for the written test. And then she's like, I understand that, but like he's gonna have to speak some type of English, like at some point. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, do you have any Spanish speakers that maybe can help him? Right. And like at that point, like I was really mad and I wanted to mirror that attitude that she was giving me back. But it was like constantly reminding myself, like, don't do that. Don't do that. Because then that makes you know better than her. So, and he's like, well, I can try, but it's not going to guarantee that he's going to get somebody that speaks Spanish. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Can you still try though? Can you still try to get somebody that speaks Spanish so you can assist them? And at the same time, I'm trying to tell him like maybe use like your Google Translator, because he was just like, but I like stood right there, right, and she just kind of like looking around, and I'm like, yeah, you have Spanish speakers here. Can you please look for somebody so they can come and help them? And she looked visibly upset, and she just kind of like and brought somebody over, um and yeah, they started like an employee, and they started speaking Spanish to him, right? And she looks at me, she's like, we're good, thank you. And I was like, okay, thank you. Right. But like in those moments of um and this is when I tell my the clients I work with, anger isn't a bad thing, right? Because in that moment I was really mad of how like inconvenient she was. My
Yeah.
assumptions, I'll take my responsibility, like um of just the tone of voice that she was using with somebody, and how even though she knows that there are Spanish speakers around, like she wasn't willing to make that. And that's when somebody else uses their anger to be like, I'll advocate for you, right? Because had I maybe not stood up, I could have chosen to just be like mad and cuss the bitch out in my thoughts and not do anything about it. But this is the part where when we say like fight for people, like show up, continue to in this fight, it doesn't mean violence, right? Like use your anger to advocate, which is exactly what happened yesterday. And yeah, he was able to, well, as far as I could see, um with like the lady, the Spanish speaking was really really polite, and you could see just how like relaxed he was um afterwards. So all that to say, one, um tap into your feelings because they're important, they're letting you know things, and use them in a different way. It doesn't mean just sit there or not be angry, but use them in a way that is going to benefit all of us
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form.
And that's the way, right? Like that's exactly what I was talking about. And the way that you did it, it takes a lot more effort and a lot more thought and a lot more patience to do that. Because
I
we
wanted to
went
cuss the
through.
bitch out, honestly. I wanted to cuss the bitch out.
Yeah, but that's the problem. That's what. I boy, hold up. The
Is
Alias
that your
looking for.
baby?
Alias like saying there's a spider over there. But that's the thing, right? That's how we unfortunately we respond to um those people where you just end up like wanting to fight or get so defensive because it doesn't make any sense, and we just end up causing more of the bigger problem that causes us to then defend our identities even more.
Hmm.
um you know so now, because of how, maybe it could be a possibility because of how you acted and how you did it, it if she has any fertile soil or something, she might question herself and be like, damn, maybe that wasn't necessary, or that was rude of me for me to do that, because you responded in a way that it was meant to be responded, not fighting back with anger or any of that, or um, with violence, I mean, or by hurting other people, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but we'll see what happens at the end of the day. um, Maybe this is, like I said, maybe this is what we needed, right?
Yeah.
Maybe this is what we needed, this is what needs to happen, and we're right on track for what's supposed to happen to then allow us to then go right. Because I remember my history professor in college was talking about how there's like a pendulum, then we go one way, and then we swing all the way to the other way, and then we start swinging back, and then eventually we go to farther than one side and we swim back. So I hope that this is as far as it gets. I hope that shit gets so fucked up that then people start seeing it, and then next time around, it costs us to go the other way, right? To be more of that. Whether I'll be here in this fucking country or not to see that, that's still foreseen. Doesn't to be out of choice or out of like out of a decision of somebody else. We'll go from there, because I just think of the my well-being and the well-being of my wife and the girls, and to it's kind of hard to continue to want to be here when to think that they're still not respected and they're still not um seen as equals and shit like that, and that all that. That's what I'm very strongly opinionated about how we get those ideas, and whether it be society, religion, the machismo thing, or whatever the fuck it is that we tend to treat people like that. It's not okay with me. Um, and then just lastly, like to those people that did go ahead, because I have this. Nobody know. Some people don't know that I'm undocumented. Some people don't know that I'm undocumented
Most
because
people
they
will know
imagine
because
because they imagine. I always think you imagine like a 5'2" fucking dark skinned fucking Mexican that's working on the fucking field. So you know what? After we put this, I'm just gonna put it out there and start like, yeah, I'm undocumented. Whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen anyways already. To let people know that this is who you're affecting.
yeah,
It's not random people on the thing. I am affected by that. So maybe we can start a campaign when we do that shit. You say I am this, and this is how this affects me and shit like that, to start humanizing us again in a way, to be like we're not what you say, or and this is what we look like, and this is what our family looks like. This is
yeah,
who I am, and this is how your decision is affecting me as a human. And no, you didn't know this about me, but this is who I am.
yeah,
This is where I'm at, and this
yeah.
is the people you're affecting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think, yeah, like I think you're right. What they see is brown people, non-English speakers. Not that there's anything wrong with being brown, short, non-English speaker at all. Um, but that is what the idea of what an undocumented person is. So when I tell people like, yeah, I used to be undocumented, and they're like, what? Like, yeah, like, and
Yeah.
people like the questions usually are like, how do you speak English so well? Right? Like, how are you able to go to school? Like all of these things, um, that like again the wrong idea, right? Because undocumented people are rapists and criminals, and they take our jobs away, and all of these things. Um, but in reality, you don't know how much my people contribute to this fucking economy. And part of me wants like I know um that you're saying like, yeah, the mass deportations are not going to happen, and not necessarily like mass deportations, but like that movie, like A Day Without a Mexican. um
Hmm.
like if we were to do that, and I get it, it would, it's a lot of people's livelihood when you're talking about doing that. But if all of the undocumented people, whether it's Latino or not, were to literally just one day be like, we're not going to show up to work. And even if I'm documented, I'm still an immigrant anyway that didn't come here legally, right? Because then that's the argument, like, go back to your country and come back legally, even though they don't know that there is no legal path to come to anyway. Um, but if all of us that came from somewhere else were to say, okay, you don't want us here, we will be gone for a day, for a week, however long, like we would make such a difference. So when we say let's continue doing this thing, um, educate people, right? Because um I was watching a reel of a person saying, how come you don't like undocumented people, right? And they're like, because they're taking our jobs and they're taking our money, blah 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 blah. Like, you're like, okay, Do you know how much money undocumented people brought into the economy? I think it was like last year or something. And they're like zero, absolutely nothing, like nothing. And these are Trump supporters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like giving them stats, like, oh, actually, when you work, um, they do take taxes from into Social Security. So they contribute. I think they said like it was like 9 million or billion. Um, and people are like, oh, I did not know that, right? Because they just stay with the rhetoric, with the narrative of like, we come in and we take your jobs and we take all of the things, but nobody tells you, explains to you like all of everything that we do to contribute to this economy. So for those that, if you know anybody that is a Trump supporter, instead of saying you're like going with the violence part, educate them, educate them and let them know how we are a good contribution to this economy, how we are a fundamental piece of this fucking country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. You just gotta keep going. Gotta keep chugging along and continue to work on ourselves and heal ourselves so that because that's what we can control, right? At the end of the day, and
I know.
healing ourselves and working on ourselves is gonna stop wars and it's gonna stop violence and it's gonna stop all that. Once we understand that part of it, that's the only thing that we can control, and we'll adjust if we have to, and we'll see what we have to do, but we're gonna be okay. Just gotta remember it's about the people hurting you, not about you. Nothing that we do ourselves. And yeah, maybe part of it, maybe the next podcast we can go directly on that, right? Based on my experience as undocumented and see what all that has been and educate people what it looks like maybe. Not that I think a lot of people on the other side are listening, but maybe it'll if it helps one person understand it, then it'll be worth it, right?
Hmm.
Maybe that's something that we can do and
Yeah.
in doing that. I had that idea actually for a project a while ago, but I never kept going. There's this page called Humans of New York where like the
Oh,
photographer approaches and takes a picture and tells a story. Like I had the idea to do that because I know that a big issue is for us to be dehumanized. So then if we just take pictures or because I have the ability to do that, take a picture, get a story, write on the story and be like, oh, this is this person and they're like this and they suffer like this and they struggle like this and this shit. And going from there so that we once again um like humanize ourselves in that way of it. But we'll see.
yeah.
But yes, um keep keep doing keep doing the right thing. It's okay to be frustrated and sad and wondering what the fuck is gonna happen. But like I said, what gives me some peace is understanding to not get ahead of myself. Yes, look a little bit ahead and start thinking of the possibilities. So that I think it makes it easier to then go along with them and see what happens. And but take that example for me of like being super stressed out and sad and be like, oh, does this mean I'm going to leave or I'm not gonna get my residency, all this shit or whatever might happen. Just be like, okay, one step at a time. What's actually happening here? What's happening today? Today I'm awake, I'm alive, I got my girls, I got my wife, I have my coffee,
Yes.
and take it one day at a time. And live in the present. Yes, look to the future, look to the past to see why it might or might not happen, but don't get so consumed in it. We already experienced this in the past.
Yes.
We already know what it's like. Just be prepared, but don't get consumed and don't get overwhelmed by what might happen. Try to be in the present, right? How do we come back to the present? Because
Yeah.
regardless of what might be happening, what's happening in the present time, it allows us to be free and allows us to be in peace
Yeah.
and be thankful for what we have and be thankful for today. And we'll see what happens tomorrow and we'll deal with it in the best of our abilities.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this a day after the election, remind just a reminder to take a big, big, big breath in and out through your mouth and ground yourself and tell yourself that we have been here before. We got through it before, and this will be no different. Continue to fight. Allow yourself to feel. Allow yourself to take in the little things. Look for support. Reach out to us if you need to. Pay attention to what your body needs today.
Yeah. Well, and in the words of the great Kendrick Lamar, we gonna be all right.
We gonna be all right.
We gonna be all right. We also gotta accept the good and the bad, man. We wouldn't appreciate the good if we didn't have the bad. So let's work and cut myself off there. Let's work on creating less bad and accepting less
Okay.
bad and going from there. But yes, reach out to us if you need it. We're here for you.
We're here.
Take care. Peace.